Nope. Hold on a second. Yeah, we have to make sure we turn the microphones on, otherwise it doesn't record. You have to push it and kind of hold it in for a second, I think. There you go. Make sure your green light's on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Beach, make sure you turn your microphone on if you're going to talk, please.
You want it off if we're not? Is it going to cloud up the recording?
It's okay. No, it'll be fine.
All righty. We're going to go ahead and start. This is the LaGrange Code Enforcement Board. It is Thursday, April the 10th. A couple of minutes behind here at about 1:03. I'd like to call the meeting to order. As such, commission members that are present today, we have Rod, Mike, myself, council is here as well, so everybody is present. First order of business is approval of minutes from 2 meetings now. Have those in front of you if you've read over them. If you haven't, give them a quick buzz, and any comments, please bring them forward.
I'll make a motion we approve the February and March minutes as printed.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the February 13th and the March 13th, 2025 minutes. Can I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
And Rod seconds that motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? There being none, motion passes. Next order of business today is representative for Mr. Mullins here.
I think they just walked in.
Just walked in. All righty. We have, we'll let them come in and get situated. It is a status update for citation 240181 with Mullins Turf and Lawn Care, 2104 Button Lane. So, Officer Winther.
I am going to have Patrick come up and explain. We've got some pictures on the slide behind you. I know that means you have to turn around. Sorry, we haven't figured out the whole TV situation in here yet. Patrick has been doing the weekly inspections, so I'm going to have him come up and just kind of run you through some of these pictures.
All righty.
These first it's just a transgression from February through yesterday, as a matter of fact. And that is just a picture of the water course where the water should naturally flow down to the basin. As you can see, there's not a lot of change, but it has been incredibly wet, which we 100% understand. And they have asked for an extension, which I believe has been granted without an issue. And it pretty much progresses. The pictures behind there, if you'd like to show them, Aaron, that's just the water course. These are just to show you that there's not a lot of change that's happened other than we've seen some erosion going down the hill. And you can get rid of that if you'd like. Yeah, just go to those next ones. So what I'd like to just see happen now, and same thing, that's the top of the hill, which is where they're doing most of the work through currently. So I don't expect to put grass and seed down just to drive through it and ruin it. So I'm not asking for any extra work, but get rid of that for a second. I'd like to just see that large rock pile. Not that one, nope. Right here, what I'd like to see is actually, that is sitting directly in the course of the water that comes off of the large acreage above. Yep. So what we'd like to see is, I'd just like to see it moved so the water can actually have a free flow through there. And I think it would actually help your cause. You see where the natural flow of the water is going to run. And if we can get that natural course, a lot of it's going to do its work for itself, and then you'll be able to push that over, and if you want to use that fill to that side. So really, I know it's really, really wet, but I think with a skid loader, you could move that over to your fill pile on the other side of the water course. And I think you've asked for an extension for another 30 days, and truthfully, I don't think you're going to make that time frame either. Maybe you surprise me.
We asked that before the 10 inches of rain.
Yeah, and that's why we very much understand, and that's why I really would like to see that pile moved in. There is some new brush that's coming down from up there, and I do see it off to the side. It's not great in that picture, but there is one on there which I can forward you those, but you see it every day. So we just like that moved now so we can get some of that natural water course flowing before you start doing any of that dozer work. I think you'll see where the water is going to naturally want to flow, and it might save you a lot of work.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So partly,
Okay, can't talk.
Oh yeah, come up here. It doesn't, the microphone doesn't record you.
Hope you understand, we're going along with the technology. And I'd like to back up just a second, Patrick. I forgot to swear you in and all, and I can get you both at the same time if you don't mind. So do you both swear or affirm that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Proceed.
So, you and Ed already talked, and we know why that pile's there and where it's gonna go, right? So that's not a problem. If we wanna do that now, that's fine, and we've got some stuff to add to it. There's some various other piles in there that are on the high side that we do think we can get to. It's a drop in the bucket of what is going to need to happen, but I'm happy to do it. But I do wanna point this out, and we left that there as kind of a catch. And so that beaver dam of limbs is just from the recent rains. We've already cleared that once. And that is a pretty good representation of what continually comes downstream and then is expected to make a 45, almost a 90-degree turn and then go through the better part of 2 acres of open field. So it does all eventually make it down into the bottom of that detention basin, but if it's a mediocre rain, it likes to stop right in the middle of the field, right? So, and then we get left dealing with that. So reiterating why a lot of this was starting with the rock and the various other things, it was to help circumnavigate or deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with, the oversaturation, the abundance of water, and then we're the catch-all, right? And I get it, it's gotta go somewhere, it's not that big of a deal, but that is what comes downstream consistently, if not worse or varying in products and trash and various other things.
There is, and there might be another picture there, but just to the left of that pile of rock, there is brand new brush I can see washed out.
Yep.
And that's what I was gonna say. So if we open that up, I think it'll stop some of that, but it'll also open up your water course.
Yeah.
I think it'll show you naturally where the water's gonna flow, which
Yep.
will then ease your burden as far as what you need to move to make that water course make the detention basin.
But then again, right, so reiterating that if in the best case scenario, that beaver's dam worth of limbs and various other things is gonna end up right in your detention basin, i.e. where your drain is, and now you've got a whole new issue.
No, and I did actually go up to your neighbor behind, and there is some issues there, which is a whole separate issue, and I have some pictures of that too. So
Okay.
there is an intent, because on their side, there is some concrete that look like sidewalks, driveway, whatever, and that's another whole subject, but we'll deal with your neighbor.
Yeah, no big deal. I mean, again, I'm not there to cast any of that. It's more of just highlighting, like, once we're done and we've fixed the issues that we need to fix, that's gonna be a new issue for you guys to deal with. So just so that you're prepared for when your time comes to do your part, that's what you get to deal with. Yeah. So, or you get to deal with, I should say. So, thanks.
I think that's it for now.
Any questions for Patrick or
I
anybody?
think it comes down, at this point, I think it comes down to, how much time he's gonna need additional, because I think we're already approaching your 30-day extension, and I'm not opposed, obviously, the whole goal is just get it cleaned up. I'm more than happy to work with you to get that done.
Thank you, Patrick.
I guess just to follow with what Patrick said, we did have a lot of rain the past week. Prior to that, we weren't seeing much movement out there, so I would like to see some more movement within the next month. So we'll come back next month and see.
So we are, in fact, in lieu of all the rain and everything, we're gonna, and fast approaching that 30 days, extend it out another 30 days. Do we have a motion or anything for that? All right, so what would that date be then, Stephanie?
So the next date would be, calendar out, look. Our next code board would be on May 8th.
Okay. So then the cutoff date or the completion date was what, Pat, do you remember? Or Stephanie?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Got you.
So I'm thinking I think we requested our minimum 30 days, based on the facts.
Right.
Maybe 45 days is better, but maybe we're gonna, May, push it back. Sometime in May, sort of reassess on May.
Or do we want to skip the May meeting and just give them an extra week or two and just go to June 12th?
I'd be inclined to take.
That way, because we've got kind of an overlap on the
coming back
dates.
every month.
Right, right.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll be drying out.
Fingers crossed. All right, so we'll do it June 12th then, at 1 o'clock.
So are you saying the contract extension, John, is valid to be June?
Well, the original
Not
30,
the contract, but
yeah,
agreement.
the original 30-day extension was,
Well, he said March 24th.
started March 24th. So it would have been April 24th when it expired, and we're not there yet.
May 24th.
So if we do it to May 24th, then we've already passed the next code board meeting. Let's just do it to June. It gives them an extra week or two, and then we'll get back on 30 days that match up with the code board.
So make the,
You don't want it done a few days before the code board, so you can, like, clear up everything.
I mean, we could do that too. Patrick, what do you think? Do you want to do it like the Friday before? Or Monday?
That'd be the sixth, and then we could assess it, I mean, obviously, it's not done, it's not done.
Right.
And then we go out and look at it on the sixth, that's Friday,
Okay.
and we'll look for basically by the time it comes back around, and then follow.
Okay. So we'll do an inspection on June 6th, but code board will be
That's a week ahead, that's Thursday to Thursday.
June 5th, and then we'll come back to code board on June 12th,
Plan for final walkthrough inspection on the 6th.
on the 5th,
5th.
on the 5th.
So we need a motion to change that.
To put in the form of a motion, I would make the motion that we move the remediation date to June 5th to be reviewed in the June 12th Code Enforcement Board meeting.
So we have motion on the floor, as was said by Mike. We need a second on that, please.
Second.
Rod seconds the motion. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? There being none, motion passes, and we will see you guys back then on June the 12th. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Pray for dry weather.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Next case we have on the agenda today is citation 250038, Laura Taylor. It's a violation of manner of parking. Officer Winther, if you could start off.
So everyone has a packet. The front page of the packet is the ordinance 7202, manner of parking. The citation was written for the B as in boy, the second one down. All persons shall park the vehicles which they drive or are in control of on their own property or in their own driveways or on pull-off areas of the right-of-way. Visitors of residents shall park their vehicle in the driveways of their hosts or on pull-off areas on the right-of-way unless no such space is available. If no such space is available, visitors of residents may park their vehicles on the street so long as its two right wheels are off the pavement or are within 6 inches of and parallel with the curb and the vehicle is facing the flow of traffic. No vehicle may remain parked on the street for more than 24 hours. Second page, which is listed as 1A, back in 2011, the parking ordinance was modified. Originally, it just had, if you look under the B, you can see the underlined areas that were added on. Originally, the ordinance was just that you have to park in the driveway. And in 2011, it was modified that visitors of residents shall park their vehicle in the driveways of their hosts or pull-off areas unless no such space is available. If no such space is available, visitors of residents, again, may park their vehicle in the street. With the vehicle facing the flow of traffic, no vehicle may remain parked on the street for more than 24 hours. So that was changed in 2011 for visitors. The next page, page 2, is a copy of the citation the Code Enforcement Board hearing notice that was given to them, given to Laura and Lyra. Page 3 is a picture from January 8th, 2024, where you can see the white car parked on the street. Directly behind that, the house in the middle is 404 Woodland Lake. That is the Taylor residence. There is one car parked in the driveway, and there is room in the driveway for 3 other vehicles. Next picture is June 10th. It's the angle of just the car itself. It was parked the other direction. Next picture is September 4th. Again, the vehicle's parked the wrong way, facing the wrong way, but you can see the house in the background, again, with just one car parked in the driveway. October 14th, the car again was parked in the street. Now, each of those pictures, a postcard was left on the windshield, courtesy notice explaining what the ordinance was. On October 14th, I issued a citation for parking in the street. I incorrectly put the wrong citation number on there. I put 7202A, which was not the correct one. It should have been B. When Jason Taylor, when they contested the citation and asked for a hearing and brought that to my attention, that's the section of 8. That is the request for the hearing. And then the next section of 9 is the email correspondence back and forth between all of us, between myself, Jason Taylor, and Beach Craig Mile. When I realized that the ordinance, the incorrect ordinance number had been given, written on the citation, I chose at that time not to pursue it any further. And in here you can see, the conversation back and forth with Jason, that the incorrect ordinance was referenced on the citation. I let him know what the correct ordinance was, and I said we're not going to pursue this matter any further. It was a mistake on my part. I just put the wrong ordinance down. Then page 10, from February 21st, 2025. You can see the vehicle parked in the street. There's several pictures, 10, 11, and 12. The vehicle is parked in the street. Again, the house is in the background. You can see that there's a black car parked in the driveway, and there is space for 3 other cars. There's a picture of the citation that was left on the windshield of the car. There's a copy of the citation that was left on the windshield. And then we mailed a citation. It's my understanding from Jason that they didn't get the citation in the mail till later. Unfortunately, I can't control the mail, but it had been left on the car, so they were aware of the citation. Code citation instructions. This is how to contest the citation. It's left with every citation. Page 16A, B, and C is the request for hearing, response to the citation. You can read this as it is. One thing I would like to note, that in here it is noted on page 16B that they had received a citation on October 15th, and that one was advised on the same day that they were not proceeding with the citation. It says in here, at the time, the Code Enforcement Department was well aware of the defective nature and ambiguity of the ordinance at issue, and that it needed to be changed. The reason, again, that ordinance in October was no longer pursued is because I accidentally wrote the wrong number on there. It wasn't because I was unclear on what the ordinance stated. It's just that I made a mistake and wrote the wrong ordinance number on there. So I wanted to clear that up. And then that's what I've got.
All right. Stephanie, do you have anybody that's going to speak?
I do not, no.
All righty. Then I would like to call up Laura Taylor and/or Jason, who I understand is representing Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate that. And actually, Laura and Lyra, because both of their names are on the citation. Laura's here, Lyra's in school today, so I wanted to have one of them here in the event she wants to speak, and she may or may not. So, and my understanding is there may be closing statements after I'm done for her. Is that correct? And so I might reserve a few words in case
Yeah,
there's, okay.
you'll have opportunity.
Just want to make sure I had the procedure right, thank you. And I,
I'm sorry.
yep,
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do. Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you very much. And I do have some exhibits for you all, and I will give a copy to Mr. Craig Mile and to Code Enforcer Officer Winther as I discuss these. And you can add those to your long list of documents. My name is Jason Taylor. I've been a LaGrange resident for 25 years. Currently in my 15th year on the LaGrange City Council, as you may know. I've been an attorney for 27 years. When I was growing up as a child, I loved watching the show, The People's Court. I don't know if you all remember that show with Judge Wapner, but I think that was probably one of the early things that I watched that intrigued me about being an attorney. The one episode I remember most about that show was when a guy sued a convenience store owner for $1. And I still remember that. And why? Well, he bought a Coke, and it was flat. You might be able to find it on YouTube, I don't know. He bought a flat Coke, and he was not happy about it. He took it up to the cashier, the owner. He told him it was bad, it's flat. He wanted his money back or another drink. The store owner refused to give him one, and the store owner refused to give his money back. So he was stuck with a flat Coke. And I remember what he told the judge that day. He said, it's not about the dollar, it's about the principle of the matter. And that's why I'm here today. That's why I've done many hours of work on this. As we sit here today regarding the citation, it's about the principle of the matter, doing what's right. And the citation at issue was issued on February 21st, 2025. We did file that response. I believe you were given a copy. I may have a couple duplicate copies, so I apologize if I give you something that's a duplicate. But before I get into my comments fully in supporting the dismissal of this citation, I want to give you a little bit of background about this. My daughter, Lyra, 20 years old now, was 19 at the time of this citation and the previous one before that. She's a full-time student at U of L, and that's why she's not here today. She's a sophomore. She works third shift schedule. And there was actually a prior citation received by her on October 14th, 2024, for allegedly violating this parking statute. We did file a response on October 24th, 2024. We did request a hearing. We made similar arguments in that response that we did in the response we filed as to this particular violation notice. And I want to go ahead and give you a copy of Exhibit 1, which is that initial response to that October citation. Thanks. I'll be around a few times. Make sure you have your information. That citation, and you can read my response, it was riddled with errors as noted in our response. There were a series of emails that were mentioned thereafter, and ultimately, very shortly after we filed this response, we were advised that Code Enforcement was dropping the charges, was not going to proceed with that citation, nor would it be reissued. And I'm going to give you a copy of the emails that I have on this one chain as well. Obviously, at that time, we felt that our position was clear and our interpretation was appreciated, and hopefully the City Council was going to revisit this ordinance at some point to make some improvements and avoid any further ambiguity or misapplication. So we fast forward a few months, and we get to Friday, February 21st, 2025. Lyra again parked in a similar area of the cul-de-sac in front of our home. And as you probably know, and other people that have these issues, where people people are trying to get out of the garage at various times of day to go to work, and if people are blocking out the way, it's hard to get out of there without taking 5 or 10 minutes every day and moving cars and shifting the room. Sometimes she would park in the cul-de-sac to assist me or Laura, to get our cars out while she's asleep after her night job. So it's basically a parade of vehicles that led to her parking there in the first place. That night, she had returned home at 4:27 a.m. and she was cited. Let's see, it looks like she was cited on February 21st, 2025 at 9:24 or 9:25, depending on which of these documents is accurate, and I don't know which one's really accurate, but one was left on her vehicle. Exhibit 3, for the record, was the one left on her vehicle, and Exhibit 4 was the document that we had mailed to us shortly thereafter. Lyra had returned home, as I said, at 4:27. Citations right around 9:24, 9:25. She had been home for less than 5 hours. So, we had to then decide whether to pay the citation or to request a hearing. So, we consulted all of our documents. We reviewed all of this. We talked to our daughter. We looked at the city ordinances carefully. Something came to my attention as well during that I just wanted to bring to your attention, and this is Exhibit 5 for the record. What I put on Exhibit 5 is 72.99, which is the penalty section of the LaGrange ordinance relative to parking violations. I've also put at the bottom of the document the ordinance violation citation important instructions that are actually part of all the citations apparently that are being given to everybody in the city. And I was looking over that, like, well, do we need to pay this? Do we need to have a hearing? What do we need to do? And I noticed on 72.99, first offense is a fine of $50 if paid within 30 days of the citation. And in fact, everything says within 30 days of the citation. And then I go down to the important instructions that were on the citation. Option 2 is ultimately what we chose to have a hearing, okay? But option 1, if we would have decided not to contest the citation, it tells us to pay it in person within 14 days from the date of issuance. So I was a little confused about that. Is this another error, or is it something more than that? And as further discussed, it appears to me that not only is this ordinance being applied to make it easier for code enforcement officer to ticket people without having to come back around and make sure they didn't go over that 24 hours, but it's also being applied in a way to try to maximize the number of tickets given. And instructions actually are against the plain language of the penalty ordinance. Are they trying to get people to pay faster? So it was just something that went into my head. It didn't affect me because we chose to have a hearing, but I did want to bring it to your attention because I feel it's important. Now, we decided to request a hearing. We responded to that. It's been provided to you, I believe, but I will go ahead, just for the record, and make my Exhibit 6 part of the record as well, which is our response to the current citation. Now let's get to the ordinance at issue. And I'll give you a copy of that shortly as well. If you read and interpret the ordinance as we read it, the ordinance is not being violated. She was cited specifically for not parking in her driveway. That's the only thing that she was cited for. And under the plain language of 72.02b, the very last sentence, it states, no vehicle may remain parked on the street for more than 24 hours. When this citation was issued on Friday morning, February 21st, the vehicle had been on the street for less than 5 hours. If that last sentence does not apply to the entirety of the subsection, then it should be in a different subsection. This is being interpreted as if there's no reason ever for a resident to park on the street unless the driveway is simply jam-packed. Apparently nobody can use their driveway for a purpose other than just jamming it with cars. There can be a legitimate purpose for a driveway to be used other than parking vehicles. I think this interpretation is flawed, and it's being interpreted in a way that's convenient for them to ticket. Whether the car's been there for 5 hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes, or whatever small amount of time. Now, as you've heard, they don't think this language applies to the entire section of 72.02b, that it only applies to visitors. I point you to a couple other ordinance sections, and I'm going to go ahead and give those to you as well. Exhibit 7, which also includes the one I just talked about, 72.02, but it also includes 72.06, A and B, and I've also included a copy of the penalty section, 72.99. Look at 7206 A and B, which I think is page 2 if I did that right. Talks about all-night parking and abandoned vehicles. And I point this out because in section A, it says, it shall be unlawful for anyone to park in one place any vehicle on any of the public ways or streets of the city for a period of 24 hours or longer. Yet again, the city's being told you can park there, but no more than 24 hours. Abandoned vehicles, the same exact thing. And I don't think it can be disputed that the 24-hour language in both 7206A and B actually applies to those specific sections, 7206A and B. I think the 24-hour allowance was already crystal clear, but it's certainly addressed in both of these as well as 7202B. So what they want you to think is that in two of these, 7206A and B, the 24 hours applies to those sections, but 7202B, it only applies to visitors. That is not what the ordinance says. It applies to the entirety of the section. Now, I wanted to bring to your attention what had been discussed at the city council meeting in March. I think I might have noted March 4th on my response. I think the meeting was actually the 3rd, so I apologize if I typoed that. But that meeting is on the YouTube streaming video. I'd like to also note as an exhibit to my comments today, as well as all of my exhibits I've given you. I'm not going to play the video for you. Okay? I'm not playing a 3-hour video. I'm not even playing a portion of it, unless you want me to. I'll be happy to, but I'm referencing it. The full time of that video is 3 hours, 35 minutes, and 27 seconds. I'm referencing specifically Officer Winter's section from 2 hours, 34 minutes, and 25 seconds through 2 hours, 51 minutes, and 19 seconds. And I think that's when she gave her or at least a large part of her committee, her code enforcement report, and this issue of the parking issue in LaGrange was discussed by a lot of different council members and the city attorney and the mayor and Ms. Winther. So I wanted to bring that up to you, and I'll give you some quotes here in just a moment. Now, in Kentucky, the city council is the legislative body of the city, and they determine the legislative intent of the city ordinances, as they're the ones who enact them and adopt them. In Kentucky, legislative intent refers to the goals and purposes that legislators had in mind when enacting a particular law. And it's a practice used by judges, lawyers, to interpret and apply those laws. But what is the legislative intent of this ordinance as to the 24-hour requirement? Well, I think the city council discussed that ad nauseum, and I encourage you to watch the video. In fact, our own city attorney, Beach Craigmile, says at 24208 in the actual video. I would suggest that we move that last sentence to maybe paragraph E, or something so that it's separate, but I agree it's poorly written. Mayor John Black, around 2 hours, 40 minutes approximately, he asked a hypothetical question, that if Lyra parked her car in that cul-de-sac at 4 a.m., why wouldn't she have until 3:59 the next morning to move the car? Based on how it's written, City Councilwoman Laura Taylor noted the ordinance was poorly worded and being misapplied. She stated, we're going to put this on the ordinance committee, we're going to rewrite this ordinance. And then in the follow-up city council meeting just this past week on April 7th, she advised the council that she was currently working on a draft that would be presented to the full council for review in the near future. Excuse me. City Council woman Latasha Booker Bishop, she talked about having the same problem and moving cars and all of that in her subdivision, and she wants to understand the intent of the ordinance because she said it was unclear. I asserted that the ordinance was ambiguous and was being misapplied during that meeting. And then City Council member Kenneth Powell, starting around 2 hours, 43 minutes, and 22 seconds, says he has the same issue with vehicles and parking and said, quote, I agree, it's poorly written. And about 18 seconds after that, he said, quote, it's our job to rewrite this and make it either flexible or stricter. It's not just a Jason problem or a Latasha problem or a Kenneth problem. It's an everybody problem, and it states 24 hours. Steffi and I have gone around and around about this. I think we look at it and either move the time or fix the ordinance one way or the other. We need to figure it out. Close quote. And then code enforcement went there at about 2:55:15 at the meeting, made a comment just generally about ordinances and says, quote, you guys can change and do whatever you want to do. I'll enforce what you want me to enforce, however you want me to enforce it within the ordinances. Close quote. But to enforce something, you have to know the legislative intent as to how it should be enforced. And when you ask the city council and city attorney currently about legislative intent, every one of them who speaks agrees it's poorly written and unclear. How can you legitimately be cited for violating an ordinance that's poorly written, unclear, and ambiguous? Now, I want to thank Mr. Craigmile for providing me this, and I think you may have another copy. Again, I apologize if this is a duplicate, because I believe Ms. Winther passed it over to you. But I've marked as an exhibit number 8, which is the ordinance that we're talking about that was modified in 2011 in April. This ordinance doesn't say anything about visitor parking in the title. It says modifying section 7202 concerning manner of parking, which is the title of 7202. What they did, though, if you'll look at it, they added the language that is underlined, just in case you're not aware of how we revise ordinances. The underlined information is new information that was inserted. So if you take that underlined stuff out and look at it, that's what it was before April of 2011 when it was amended, just so you know. The line at the end, no vehicle may remain parked on the street for more than 24 hours, was added as an amendment. It doesn't say no vehicles of visitors. It says no vehicle. It's very clear, and it's at the end of the sentence, which is a common thing that happens in ordinances where the ending sentence will basically talk about everything that that previous section has said, or that current section has said. But anyway, it's very clear, no vehicle may remain parked on the street for more than 24 hours. Lyra Taylor did not have at any point in time her vehicle on the street for more than 24 hours. In fact, in this situation, it was less than 5 hours. Now, when Mr. Kirkmouth gave me this document, actually I think it was yesterday, I looked back through it because everything that we've had previously hasn't had the underlined parts, so I appreciate him sending that to me. It actually refreshed my recollection because I was on the city council back in 2011, and I actually remember when I saw this, yeah, we did make that change. And I was thinking back about that, and remembering, my recollection of what this was about. And that's why the 24-hour time period was added, to give some cushion to people who had, their car out of the way in a cul-de-sac or wherever for a limited period of time. I recall that was the legislative intent for adding that 24-hour language, and I was on the city council at that time. But just in case, you don't want to take my word for it, I figured, well, the current city council doesn't seem to know. They're all confused. They all say it's unclear, at least the ones that spoke about it. But now looking back at this as a city council member in 2011, I remember what the situation was. What about the city attorney then? It wasn't Beach, it was Steve Emery. So I reached out to Steve yesterday, actually, and on a messenger, and straight out of the blue. And I'll give you a copy of this. This is exactly what I said. Nothing further was said between either of us besides this. I said, "Hi, Steve. I'm sending you this ordinance that passed when I was on the council and you were a city attorney in 2011. Since the prior ordinance did not have any restrictions on the number of hours someone could park on a city street, it appears that the last sentence of Section B was added in 2011 and was applicable to the entirety of Section B relative to any parking, not just visitor parking. Would you agree with that?" And I sent him a copy of the ordinance. His response, yes. I said, "Thank you. That was my recollection as well after I read the 2011 amended ordinance with those underlined changes. I appreciate your feedback. Have a great day. Hope all is going well for you." So just for the record, that's Exhibit 9. Anyone else might know about the legislative intent in 2011 when this was amended? I would think the current city council member who was on at the time and the city attorney at that time. Either wants to know that. I'll save a few words for the end, but I believe if that doesn't clear up any issue with legislative intent, I don't know what does. I thank you for your time. And if she has anything else to say, I'll come back and get my closing on. Thank you.
Officer Winther, you're up next.
Paper clips out of your way.
Just a couple of quick notes. The number one complaint in the citywide, is parking in the street. It comes from the trash companies, it comes from the school bus drivers, it comes from the mail company, it comes from the residents who have to play Frogger to get down the streets. Woodland Lakes subdivision, their HOA reaches out periodically. Residents in that subdivision will reach out periodically. They'll either call and leave a message. Sometimes they send an email saying, "Hey, can you go through our neighborhood? Check our neighborhood. We've got a lot of people parking in the street again." That last sheet that you were given, that has, since January of 2023, it has the dates that I've gone through and put warnings on vehicles that are parked in there. Jason Taylor talked about changing the ordinance. And that may happen. 2 years ago, they talked about changing the parking ordinance. I came to full city council and discussed it with full city council and said, "Hey, we're getting some complaints. Can we change this?" And at the time, they did not want to change it. So I think going forward, they're still going to go ahead and try and change it, but I have to enforce the ordinances that are on the books right now. I can't enforce what might happen in the future. I have to enforce what's here now. I don't disagree that there's a last sentence on there that says 24 hours, but the very first sentence is the one that talks about parking in the driveway. And I think that is the meat of the ordinance itself, that you have to park in your driveway. I think once you meet those conditions that are listed above, then that's when the 24 hours comes into play. If your driveway's full and you've got people parking in the street, then they're allowed to do that, but they can't be there for more than 24 hours. I can address the penalty issue, the 30-day during the 14-day. That is a little confusing. I've tried several times in the past 7 years to get ordinance committee to change all that, and we just haven't gotten there yet. But the opportunity to contest a citation that you were written, you only have 14 days. So that's why the information on there says 14 days, because you can only contest it. You have 14 days to contest any citation. State law, I think, is 7. We give everybody 14 days. So I don't enforce the pain of the fine within the 14 days, but we need to make sure that we're enforcing the contesting of the citation, because that's the ordinance for that. Yes, I'd like to change the other ordinances that have the penalties on the bottom of the ordinances. Haven't gotten there yet. So the ordinance we're talking about today was 72.02B. He brought up 72.06. That is not the ordinance he was cited on. That is not an ordinance I even need to address today. That is not what the citation was written for. It was written for 72.02B, which again, the first sentence says, all persons shall park the vehicles which they drive or are in control of on their own property or in their own driveways or on pull-off areas on the right-of-way. I think that's all the notes that I have. Did you have any questions?
Any of the board have members questions?
I have a general question for any of the ordinances. I went through several of these. An ordinance that is a paragraph with multiple sentences, often compounded run-on sentences, often that change direction or clarify along the way. In order for you to write a citation, does the person that you're writing it on have to violate every single word of that citation?
So like in this situation, 72.02B, I mean, there are other parts of it. I guess the car wasn't facing the flow of traffic. It wasn't within 6 inches of the curb. I mean, there were other parts of it, but the intent on this one was the not parking in the driveway. So I don't think you have to meet all of those standards. You can just meet part of them.
And do you know which sentence in an ordinance supersedes the rest of it? The first sentence or the last sentence?
The way I have always learned it is the first part of it is the meat of the ordinance. That is the main point of the ordinance. And then there's other things that come behind it that are just secondary.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question so much as I have a statement.
Okay.
I've lived in LaGrange about 20 years. I live on 4th Street. My driveway fits basically 4 vehicles. Married, wife, company truck. This is years ago when I first moved here. And all the way to somewhere 2011, 2012. So with that being said, I have 2 kids, both have cars. I have nieces that came to live with me, that actually came to Kentucky to live for a little while. Driveway is completely full all the time. So before, currently, where if you look at the front of my house, it's a gravel between the pavement and the sidewalk. That was done by the water company when they replaced the water main. They dug that up one day when I was on vacation. But before that, there's grass and, there's just like a normal median right there, so to speak. So we park on the street all the time. There's no other choice, we park on the street. And, with that being said, I've had police come at that time, which I don't know when LaGrange started enforcing versus police. So I'm not sure when that happened. But at that particular time, I would have my tires marked. So I would question that when I was see an officer. That was back in the days, because the question is, and the same thing was told to me there, if you have space in your driveway, you should park. But if you're on the street for 24 hours, we're gonna mark it. So my question to the officer that day is that I have 6 other people living in this home, and we can all come and go at different times. Some of us go out walking, some of us are calm, some of us might ride with the other. And the car that's on the street is gonna remain on the street until that person comes back and moves it if there's space on the driveway, which there's not. So that was my definition of it, and what I was told that day, is you have 24 hours. As long as you're moving your vehicles 24 hours, they are not considered parked, there's no fine or citation. With that being said, I've had my own run-in with parking tickets. So I've had friends that's come over. This is prior to, again, before the graveled area, whatever you want to call it, the public right of way. And this come and actually did not park into the gravel. They came in real late one night, parked on the pavement, didn't get 2 wheels off of it. They blocked the road, they got a ticket. Walked right back over, back when the police station was right here on Jefferson, talked to him about it. And, he pointed out, pulled the ordinance up, says, we wouldn't have given the ticket if 2 wheels were off the pavement. And I'm like, all right, it's a good ticket, let's pay this. And it wasn't my ticket, it was a guest in my house. But that's the way I've always interpreted it. I still park on the street. Fortunately for me, somebody came in, and I say fortunately because it was actually upsetting when they replaced the water main and I ended up with a gravel pit in my front yard. But at the same time, it was a blessing and a curse because I was off the road. And I understand that it's a very busy intersection. So, I have always, like I said, interpreting and reading through this, the 24-hour period has always been what I've always accepted and what I've believed in, and what I've had at least 2 police officers tell me in person at the time where I was getting my wheels marked, and also at the police station on Jefferson Street when they were there.
So I can't speak, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done.
With that being said, when we talk about these ordinances, so, number 1, parking is Louisville also. I mean, you can go through Douglas Hills, Highlands, anywhere you want. It's a rat race just to get through, and it truly is. Cases up and down Bardstown Road where you can only park on one side of the street versus the other side of the street. So if you make a law, if you're going to say everybody has to park in their driveway, Oldham County Day, Ironman Day, I would expect everybody on my street to get tickets because they line it on both sides. I have missed work when I first moved to Oldham County. I have missed work because there was no way to get out of my driveway if people were blocking it. And when I've contacted everybody, it's just, well, this is part of Oldham County Day. And I'm like, all right, so, I've moved here, accepted it. And at the same time, when we talk about the, like I said, in my house between the sidewalk and the road, there is a, oh, I'm sorry. So, when I'm parking on my side of the road, like I said, with the gravel pit there, that's great. But at the same time, if I'm doing that, that prevents somebody else from parking there. Do you really own that little piece when you drive up and down LaGrange, that little piece in front of your house? Because a lot of it has been paved over the years, and who knows how that has happened, but I would imagine when the city came through, somebody said, hey, could you pave this? And they paved it right to the sidewalk, and it gives them a little extra parking, whether it's on Madison Street or 5th Street, 4th Street's got places on it. And when I got this packet the other day, I drove through LaGrange just to look at all the cars parked. And there's numerous cars that are parked on the street that I can bring photographs and everything else that are not in their driveway, and their driveway is empty. But you have to give that person the benefit of the doubt that they pulled out of the driveway, parked here, and maybe they're not there at that time. Maybe that car is just sitting there. I think that's what that 24 hours is it's got to give somebody a benefit of the doubt.
So I can't speak for what happened before I got here. I can't speak for what happened when you first moved here and they were chalking tires.
Right.
We haven't done that since I've been here, so I can't speak to any of that.
The same ordinance was on the books, and I agree with you. The same ordinance was on the books, because I think it was 2011, 2012, because I was told the 24-hour period. And actually, I do my research on it, and I haven't.
So the part in between the street and the sidewalk would be considered the right-of-way.
Right.
And anybody can park there. Even if it's grass, just completely grass, you can park there. Matter of fact, in 2017, the city modified the parking ordinance that if you do park in the right-of-way and you tear up the grass, you're responsible for fixing it. Places where it's asphalted or concreted there, I would hazard a guess, and I don't know for sure, the city probably did not do that. It was probably whoever lived there probably brought gravel in or brought cement in so that they could use that as a parking space because maybe they were tearing up the dirt. I don't know. Again, I can't speak to that. I do know when I drive around, you know, that's one of the things that I do look for. Prestwick Estates, Woodland Lakes, Washington Manor, those are the places we get the complaints most of. But I do enforce that citywide. You know, it's not, I don't just pick on certain neighborhoods. If I get a complaint for Prestwick Estates for a certain street, when I go in there, I don't just do that certain street. I do the whole neighborhood, because I'm not picking on just one house. I'm gonna enforce it for the entire neighborhood. But the way I read it and the way I understand it as far as ordinances go, that first sentence is really what it's all about. That's what the ordinance is all about. And then if you are gonna park on the street because you meet these other requirements, then these are the rules you have to follow. You have to be with the flow of traffic, you have to be within either 6 inches or 2 wheels off the pavement. So that's how I interpret it.
We say, you paint all sorts of scenarios, and I'm not defending anybody, but I'm just saying that my experience has been 3 cars in front of my house parked on the street, there's 4 cars in the driveway.
Yeah.
1 car pulls out of the driveway and goes off, and the other 3 people are down at the farmer's market.
And I can also tell you that I work Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30.
Right.
We've suggested, hey, maybe I should work evenings, maybe I should work weekends, and I've been told you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. So I know there's a lot of things that happen in the evening. I know there's a lot of things that happen on the weekends. I don't have any control of that if I'm not here.
And I'm not, you know, that's a whole nother page, and I don't, I'm
Yeah.
getting into the big heavy discussion.
And I can't,
Personally, to me, it should actually go back to the police, should be enforcing parking.
and
Because
the police don't, you know, right now especially, we're so short on police officers, they don't have time to enforce parking issues.
One way or the other, but they're
Yeah.
the ones that drive through the neighborhood 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're on duty all the time.
And that's
and
something,
they
yeah.
should enforce it,
And that's
not
something
the
you can,
city of
yeah,
LaGrange.
that's
I would
something.
not want your job.
And actually, they do sometimes. If I get calls and complaints because there's more than one car or there's several cars and people can't get through, then I will call the police and say, hey, I can't get to it. Can you go over there? And they will go over and handle it. But as a, you know, I mean, if you want to talk to Chief Collette about that and say, hey, we need to step up, this is what we want to do. Right now, they've kind of got more important things, which is why I do it.
And when I was going through my parking issues in the front of the house, I know it's because of neighbors complaining on the road. So I know about that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
And I
gets the
can't,
ticket.
think of, since I've been here, I can't think I've ever seen any cars parked in the street in front of your house. I
My
don't,
goodness, absolutely.
I mean, I don't, I
absolutely.
see them in the right of way, but I mean
Yes,
yours,
they're
your
on the
cars.
easement.
Your
They're on the
cars.
easement. But
Okay.
that was only due to the fact that the water
Okay.
company, I went on vacation one year, came back home, the water company had my whole front yard dug up because the water main runs right at the edge of the pavement apparently.
Yeah.
And they backfilled it with rock. They were actually gonna come back and dig it up and put the dirt back
And-
down, and they never did.
And I know you talk about Louisville, you know, having different rules and cars everywhere, but I also know that during events like Thunder and all that, people park illegally and they come back and their cars are gone because they've been towed. So, I mean, there are places that do enforce their parking.
No, absolutely. I was referencing Douglas Hills Bardstown, just because I have friends and family that live there.
And I realize-
quite often navigate through 30 cars.
And we realize too that a lot of it's an education thing. A lot of people don't realize that is a city ordinance. And so that's why we put a courtesy notice. And I actually give people 2 or 3 chances. I mean, because if your kid takes it off the windshield, throws it in the car and you don't know about it. So, I mean, I don't just come up and give people citations. That's the last thing I want to do. All we're trying to do is get compliance. So citation is like the last thing I can do. I give notices, I give warnings. People call me and talk to me about it. We discuss it. You know, Latasha, she was brought up. Yeah, she called me. We talked about it. She knows it, and her kids park in the driveway. And if she has to leave, then they move their car, and she pulls out, and they pull back in. So,
It's a perfect situation as long as everybody's home.
yes,
You only have 1 car. You know,
Yeah.
I have 2 personal vehicles and
Yeah.
a work vehicle. My
Yeah.
wife has 2 cars.
and a lot of people are in the same boat. A lot of people have 3 kids
Exactly.
at home with cars, and people are always moving cars around.
I may not have had the keys to my son's car or my daughter's car.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I agree. It is kind of a hassle, but it is.
It's a very interesting situation. Like the ordinance is really, so that was why I've always, and that's why when I questioned the officers at the time, it was 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I was told, as long as you move these cars every 24 hours, you're not gonna.
And
have
I
an issue.
can't
So
answer to
that's
that
what-
because
that's
that was
what
in
I
the
was told
past.
about
And, you know, and what I tell people too, it is a city street. It's not a private parking lot. It is a city
Right.
street. I know this winter I got lots of calls from Corey Rusnick with Public Works. He took a lot of pictures. I was going out constantly helping him because especially when it was snowy and icy, they couldn't get in places to plow. People were saying, well, my driveway's icy, I can't park in there. okay, well, we can't plow the road because cars are parked here and that affects everybody in the whole neighborhood. So, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. Jason, you're back at the stand, sir.
I know we've been here a little while, so thank you all for being patient with everyone. I don't have a whole lot to add, but I will point out that 2 years ago, it was a completely different city council, so what those people did back then has nothing to do with the people now. And you can look at the last city council meeting and see the results of that. One of the votes, and you can tell that anyway. But anyway, it's a completely different council. I think, and I'm not going to be critical of Ms. Winthrop. I know she's got a job to do. She's doing the job as she said. She says, "I'm here to enforce it as I see it." I think she's enforcing it as she sees fit. So I think there's a little difference there. And I think part of that's because it is unclear. And really, I think her interpretation is against the legislative intent, as I've outlined in my previous exhibits. You can't just pick and choose what you want to enforce. The section says what it says. You cannot ignore the last sentence of the section. And that's why the city council is currently trying to change this to make it easier, to make it more clear. Council and me, and just by being here, I'm trying to make her job easier. I want these ordinances to be clear so she can do her job and not have to listen to me complain about it. I want to make it easier for the city council so that they don't have any issues with people calling them about the ordinances being ambiguous. I'm trying to make your job easier because you have other things to do than be listening to me for 30, 45 minutes on a Thursday. I think it's Thursday. I like it when things are clear, and I'm trying to do that for y'all. With regard to citations that residents get in our city, some are valid, some are not. I expect that a vast majority of citations don't lead to code enforcement hearings, or you all would probably be here as a full-time job, really. And most people just pay the ticket, and then it's done. It's just more convenient that way. It's easier. We have people getting these citations with wrong alleged violation information. We have people getting information on their citation that is inconsistent with the penalty language in the ordinance. We have an ordinance that an abundance of people, including our own city attorney currently and several city legislators, have said is poorly worded, yet people are getting cited for it. We have a former council member, myself, who served in 2011, and a former city attorney who was actually the city attorney when this ordinance was revised in 2011, Steve Emery, saying that the 24-hour language applies to the entirety of the 7202B ordinance. So going back, as I close here, and I'll be done, to my prior comments, most people get a flat Coke, and they don't get their money back. They just drink the Coke, they throw it away, whatever. They just simply leave the store. We chose not to leave the store. Similar to that case, the case before you is about the principle of the matter, as I said before. This is about doing what's right. It's about modifying an ordinance to ensure that it can be clearly understood by residents and visitors about what's expected of them, and to ensure the ordinance is being properly enforced. Accordingly, I'll close with this. I respectfully request that you all dismiss the citation at this time. I do believe this ordinance is currently being rewritten, and hopefully we can make it a lot better and not have any further issues like this. I think that's all I have to say at this point. I thank Mr. Craig Ma, Ms. Winther, and the entire board. I thank you for your service, and thank you for listening to me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Officer Winther, you have anything else, closing statements or anything? So at this time, then, the board will have discussions and hopefully come to an agreement on this situation. Mike, I know you've made quite a few notes here.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get your thoughts on this, sir.
I say this every time we meet. I'm a simple man, and this board has a simple task. Is there an ordinance written? The answer to that is yes. Is there a violation? That's the part that opinions, interpretations, misunderstandings can sometimes cloud it. I would love for this one to be written. I'm in an HOA. We deal with parking all the time. So to me, it comes down to, as far as it being about the principle, I think there's another principle in play, and that principle is I can violate an ordinance if I don't understand, agree, like it, or inconvenienced by it. And that's a dangerous principle too, to say, I don't like the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit on 71, I can do 70, 75. It's the principle of it. That's a whole different conversation, because that's a lot clearer than this. So I don't disagree at all that the ordinance committee has some work to do. You're fortunate that you know somebody on the ordinance committee and can get a quick audience with that person. You may not have to schedule an appointment with them. For me, the whole thing, you both make compelling arguments. I'm a daddy, I fight for my daughter, so you're to be commended to say, girl, we're gonna fight this thing. I'm the same way. To me, it comes down to, and that's why I ask, does the whole paragraph have to be a violation? If you're in compliance with one of these 9 items, do you throw the whole thing out? If you violate 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, what's the tipping point? That's where, for me, clarity is going to be essential. Back to us, our job is not to clarify, write, edit, amend the ordinances. Ours is to look at it and say, and here's how I read it, 7202B, all persons shall park the vehicles which they drive or are in control of on their property or in their own driveway or pull-off areas of the right-of-way. That's a long run-on sentence. But to me, it says, you got to park in your driveway or the pull-off areas. And then I feel like it's going, what about visitors? Okay, let's talk about visitors. Visitors also need to park in the driveway or the pull-off area. And then, but like, what if there's no room? Okay, let's talk about that. If there's no space available, then you can park on the street as long as you have 2 wheels, you're facing this certain direction, you're 6 inches close to the curb. And P.S., if you're gonna park on the street because there's no room on your driveway, if you have to do that, let's add one more sentence. Can't do it for more than 24 hours. And I see where you're going, forget the first 5 sentences. I'm focusing on the one I didn't violate, the 24 hours. We don't know that you weren't there 24 hours. You can't prove you weren't. We can't prove you were. To me, I'm glad they don't mark tires anymore. But to me, it becomes a simple matter of, there's an ordinance in place. There's multiple occurrences and photos. In my opinion, it's more than just, but A, you're not even parking in front of your own house. This says park in front of your own property. You're 2 doors down, whether they complain about it or not. So to me, it's pretty simple. There's an ordinance in place. There was a violation. You need to remediate it and pay the fine. And then beg the ordinance committee to hurry up and change it to make it clear. I don't think it's unclear, so that's my dilemma. I see it as pretty clear. We disagree on what we think the clarity is, but that's all right.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Rod, do you have any comments that you'd like to make, sir?
I think the ordinance is very vague and open to multitudes of interpretations, depending on how you want. I've already stated, my personal experience with it. So either enforce parking, have a no parking sign, and don't park, or allow the 24 hours to park. Because if we're going to do that, and now Stephanie's only one person, but I did drive around today. There's over 30 people parked on the street, with plenty of room in their driveways. So it makes it very interesting. So it either needs to be parking or no parking. We have ordinances on the book like 2nd Street that tells you there's no parking, but up until a year or 2 ago, there wasn't a parking sign. I have a friend who lives there that has fought for that, having a no parking sign, because he literally could not get in and out of his driveway when a business would park customers on the street. So anytime you leave something vague or open to interpretation, I think creates an issue. So to me, the ordinance needs to be rewritten. It needs to be very clear on what its intent is, that anybody can interpret it, because we have 4 or 5 people in this room and we all have a different opinion on it, which tells me that the ordinance is vague. So with that, I'd like to make the motion we dismiss the citation and everything.
Before we do that, I want to make a comment. I've been fortunate enough to sit on this board in various capacities. I missed a meeting, and I came back the next time, and somebody said, "Well, you're chairman now." Anyway, that aside, I think that Stephanie does a very, very good job of her role as a code enforcement officer. Certainly, she can't be everywhere all the time. As she mentioned herself, that a lot of things happen in the evenings when she is not at work. But I think with the amount of warnings that she gives and notifications to folks, I know that Beach used to tell her many years ago that she was being too nice. And I think sometimes she is still too nice. But anyway, I don't believe at all, as Jason commented, that Stephanie goes around kind of willy-nilly and does as she sees fit with code or code enforcement. I agree with Mike about the statement that the main meat of this whole thing and what our decision is to decide whether there was a violation made. With that first sentence in there, I say yes, that there was a violation made. And that's, for us to make the decision on. I agree, the Code Enforcement Committee does need to revisit all this. They kind of got their hands full with that and everything else City Council has to do. There's a whole lot of work there. But I think the gist of it, my opinion on it, is that there was a violation made of that first sentence up there. It doesn't have to meet every bit of it from what I understand and I feel about it. So I'm going to say that I'm in agreement with everything that Mike had to say there in his statements. Rod, you were wanting to make a motion though?
I'll have one more thing. If we agree
Yeah.
to this, then this is the way, and Stephanie, you do a great job. I'm not trying to pick on you, but parking has been a major issue since I've been here. So if we agree upon this, I would imagine your phone's gonna get lit up on phone calls on people parking for an hour or two, because it still goes on 2nd Street every day. Every day there's people parking on 2nd Street, blocking the driveway, every single day. And as far as I know, it took years to get a sign actually stating that no one could park there. On the right-hand side, there's still no signs on the left-hand side. I don't know why anybody wants to do it, because I joke about it, but I feel like I'll go down and park my big white box truck and block traffic and wait for somebody to come, because there's so many people that park on it. And then as you come up 2nd Street, as you cross, and I'm not familiar with the cross street right there, is it Adams? When you come up, you have the residents to the right past the donut shop. You have the residents to the right that parks there all the time in front of their house. And if you're going to enforce parking, whether they're there 30 minutes, an hour, if you're outside of your vehicle, you're parked. And then you have the resident on the right that parks, and it continues all the way up. So it's a very interesting thing. So to me, it's like we have to have an ordinance that's clear, and we either going to live by it or we don't live by it, or we're going to say it's 24 hours. Now, these guys may disagree with me, but I'm just saying it opens such a large can of worms if you're going to say everybody, if you're parked on the street, you get a parking ticket. And I understand the warnings and everything else, but like I said, I think so. So I mean, I don't think.
No, and I just
Yeah.
I want to,
Yeah.
and I want to follow up with what Jason has said too. My job is the enforcement officer. I don't get to make the rules. City council gets to make the rules. So, I mean, that's conversation for them, and they're aware of it. That's what needs to change. I can't change the rules. So, that's all I wanted to say.
Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you all for your consideration, whatever you end up doing. You obviously listened to the evidence and the things that were brought before you. My daughter's not parking, we're dealing with this right now. She's parking on the driveway because she knows we're going through this hearing to try to figure out, what's going on with the ordinance committee and this ordinance. And I think that the conversation is interesting, that there are so many people, even among everybody here, that are kind of confused on what the ordinance is. And I'm certainly not showing disrespect to Stephanie. She's doing her job. She's interpreting it differently than I am. Okay, that's when I say, see fit or whatever. She's interpreting how she's interpreting, not the way I'm interpreting, not the way that Steve Emery interpreted it, not the way the legislature who wrote the amendments actually looked at it and interpreted it when they made those changes. And that is what in Kentucky, what courts, district court in Oldham County will look to when they look at legislative intent. I want to fix this. I don't want to be back. I'm certainly not going to go tell my daughter to go park on the street and keep doing this. I mean, I don't want anybody to violate any ordinance, but we believe that this ordinance should be read as a whole. And I hope that this meeting, whatever happens, will trigger the ordinance committee, code enforcement area to kind of work together and get some clarity on this issue. So thank you for your comments, and Mike and Keith as well. Whatever y'all decide to do, thank you. I appreciate you listening to us today.
Thank you, sir. Beach, I look to you for thoughts here and there also.
I think your duty is just like Mike explained, is there a law, is there a violation? If so, what is your finding? Okay? I don't think your job is to interpret, that's the rule, that's the job of Board of Adjustments or circuit court. A lot of things. But, but if you're trying to be humanistic, you could say there's a violation, but we waive the penalty because of this. I mean, or the fine, until such time as this can be amended and corrected. It only needs a few comments to clear it up. So that's, it's your prime, if you're to say this law is unconstitutional or invalid, that's madness. You can't, what about the parking? Nobody can ever get a parking ticket anymore. So, that is the ramifications of this, the precedent you would set by saying there's no violation here, it's dangerous. But, you have complete discretion as to your remedy.
How would it best be handled? This is just a thought that made me think about this. That we make that decision that yes, there has been a violation of 7202B as was written, but we elect to waive the citation and any court fees and so forth for this, but that the citation itself still stands. I don't know, where that goes in the record.
The significance of that would be the next time this happens, it would be a double. The fine would be double, and you might not have so much mercy the second time.
Okay.
But a future occurrence would not be a first offense.
It would be a
Second
second.
offense,
So the first offense, if we determine there is a code, there is a violation, we're not a fundraising branch of the LaGrange City. Forget the 50, waive it because we're all nice guys and we get it and it's confusing and hurry up and fix it. Part of me is like, my daughter, I wouldn't get her attention if I didn't have a little bit of consequent skin in the game, $50, whatever. But my question is, if we choose to say there is an ordinance, there was a violation, stop doing it until it's changed and clearer. If it happens again, it's not first occurrence. It's like, okay, here we go again. Here's more pictures. Here's more thing. It didn't work. Now we're not first offense. We're now at second offense. So the record would say that the Code Enforcement Board recognized that a violation occurred. We chose to waive the fine.
And that was one of the things about the first time that there was a ticket written. This is not the first offense, but the first time because she made a mistake, Stephanie made a mistake, and subsection that she cited, she chose to just file it away, chose not to pursue it. So this is actually.
Yeah, and that would have been my ruling too. Sorry you made a mistake, but toss it. So I was glad as I was reading through it that everybody's like, yeah, I'm sorry, okay, everybody makes mistakes, don't lose any sleep over it, throw it out, good for you. And I'm like, man, I just wasted an hour reading through. I wish I'd have read it all the way first, because I could have thrown all the October stuff away. But here we are again with February. So I don't want to jump over your motion. You had a motion.
No, I was.
Before we started, so.
Would we be comfortable amongst the board then in having a motion that, as was said, and be said, there was an offense, but we're going to waive the citation amount of $50. However, if in the future this were to happen again and, you know, we're back at it, it would be a second offense possibly. But what we'd really want to emphasize is that the code enforcement board get together on this.
Not the code enforcement.
I'm sorry, ordinance committee, I'm sorry.
Because as long as that's what
Yeah.
it says, that's gonna be my
Right,
opinion.
right. But that the code enforcement committee work and strive to, you know, redo this.
Not the code enforcement board.
Right.
Right, not the code
The
enforcement
ordinance.
board, the
The ones
ordinance.
that write it.
I'll get it right in a minute. I'll get it right in a minute. The code enforcement committee. Ordinance committee.
Ordinance.
Thank you. I still
You want me
said
to
it,
just go ahead
didn't I?
and- Can I go ahead and turn his mic off?
Just
and
turn
be
it
done-
off.
Be done with this?
Boy, what she said, the committee. Thank you. Okay, I've got it right, it just wasn't coming out here properly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought, opposite of my partner here, but, my thought is I read the ordinance and I take it for a whole. So I'm not gonna take an individual line, I'm gonna take it as a whole, because it's like, if you do this, and this, and there's so many reasons that you could be parked on the street, at that particular time, and it's easy to see somebody can move in and out of the driveway, because I've been guilty of this myself. So that's why I probably have, not really, at least a little deeper thought on it. So I would like to say that, the motion should be, the citation should be dismissed, based on a ordinance that between three of us, or two of us, or a group of us in this room cannot determine what is 100% the way it is. And as our partner down the road said, that would be circuit court that would actually define that, right? As far as,
Well, ultimately, after a couple of years.
okay.
But in the meantime, you can never write another parking ticket.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're dismissing this on merits, that this is not unconstitutional, but it's an invalid ordinance, then that means that anybody ever gets another ticket and then make the same argument.
Well, I don't know if it's everybody gets another ticket, but again, I've lived here for 20 years. Spoken directly to police officers when the police was in charge of this. And I was told 24 hours, because I had neighbors complaining to me, and I was told, as long as you're moving this vehicle every 24 hours is not an issue, because I walked outside when somebody was marking my tire. And actually, it was after I had them all, so that's my question is if the ordinance is 24 hours to park your vehicle on the road, I'm not saying it's as you put it, unconstitutional, but I'm just saying that it doesn't meet the requirement. If his car wasn't there for 24 hours, then I don't see a violation. And that's why I would say it needs to go back to the city council. And that needs to be corrected.
I totally
But-
agree. But today, in
But
my
I can't-
opinion, today, the issue is there ordinance in place? Was it violated? B has at least 5 parts. And I'm looking at, and what's the tipping point? If you focus on 24 hours, sure, we can't prove or disprove 24, but let's assume wasn't there 24 hours. That's one. But as I'm reading through, and kind of what tipped me is, hey, I put more weight on the first sentence.
Right.
But then I'm also saying 72OB, let's see, resident shall park their vehicle, let's see, of their own property. You're not in front of your own property, so there's strike 2. In the driveway, if there's space, there was space in every picture, strike 3. 6 inches photo, I didn't bring a tape measure, so we'll skip that one, but potentially part 4. Facing the flow of traffic, 2 of the 4 pictures are, 2 of the 4 aren't. Strike 5, 24 hours, ball 1. You know, in my scorecard, yeah, 24 hours, but I can't prove or disprove that.
Is this ordinance
the-
even, can you even spell out and tell somebody they can't park on the street?
If I read the first sentence of the ordinance, it says, "All persons shall park the vehicles which
Which
they
they
drive
drive.
or are in control of on their own property or in their own driveways."
I'm gonna reference.
Period.
I'm gonna reference Oldham County to that.
That's somebody else's
I mean,
problem.
I'm just saying, but
My
that
problem
ordinance-
today is this as
You know what I'm
written.
saying, as written, with people park in front of my house all the time, my neighbors, Teresa's. people
And if they
come
get a
over,
citation and they
would
contest it and they
Right.
come here, then we talk about it.
So I'm just saying that
And
people
we
do
say,
park
come
in
on,
front-
Oldham County Day, Stephanie, give them a break.
You
I
don't
mean,
own.
then we deal with that issue
You don't own
on
in
that
front of
day.
the street though. People can, and Stephanie said herself, anybody can park anywhere in front of the house.
No, but Rod, I feel like you're generalizing.
It's a very
And
general
today's
statement.
It is, and it needs to be fixed, but today is a very specific point in time, specific address, specific house, specific case. That's the only thing we're charged to deal with.
Right.
And I'd love to visit, when you call those committees, I'll come and fight for making it clearer. I don't like these meetings because they're dumb, and in some ways they're unclear, but to me, this one's not unclear. That's my dilemma. I find it to be pretty clear. 5 out of 6 things.
What's sad about this is we just spent,
Pardon? I'm a nerd. I come to more city council meetings than you would think.
welcome you to come and provide input and let us know what would help you make your job.
Yeah. Because I'm an HOA board member in a subdivision that people violate all the time. And guess who calls Stephanie a lot? And guess who often she says, they're in compliance. They've got 2 wheels on the curb and they're facing the right direction. And they're like, dang it, I wanted you to tell them to get out of, because our HOA restrictions are more strict than the city, but we also don't have a Falcon Ridge Police Department, so we can't enforce it.
It's just as an aside, it is impossible to park the right
Right. Oh, I get it. I get it.
The front of our house is like 3 or 4 feet. It's actually our property, so it is,
Right.
there is no.
But there's 4 spaces in the driveway. Yeah, the 24 hours, I'm with you on that, but I just don't see that tipping the rest of the ordinance, in my opinion. So it's like 88% violation, so unless somebody says it has to be 100%, then I'm inclined to say, are we ready to make a motion? Because I haven't had lunch. Do we want to circle back around to yours and vote on yours?
I'd like to make the motion that the ordinance is vague and that we should drop the citation.
Okay, so Rod has made a motion that the ordinance is vague and he wishes to drop the citation
Based on the 24 hours.
based on the 24 hours. Do we have a second on that motion? So it appears we do not have a motion on that, a second on that motion. So the motion fails.
I would then,
Thank you.
since that was dead, I'll make a motion that we acknowledge the citation as written. However, we waive the $50. And remediation would be to be in compliance with the ordinance as written. No parking on the street if there's room in the driveway. And if there's not room in the driveway, the rest of the site.
So a motion's been made. Is there a second to that motion? I will second that motion. And now, all in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
Nay.
One opposition. Motion passes by majority, 2 to 1, and I think that's it, correct? Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There'll be an order that's sent out sometime this week, tomorrow. Usually Stephanie calls me and says, can you stop by here to sign this? And so there'll be something tomorrow. Yeah. Right, right. So there being no further discussion on that, it looks like we have everything taken care of on this meeting. I just need a motion to adjourn if you're in favor of that.
I don't know, let's stay a while.
Yeah?
No, I would like to make the motion
You
to
did?
adjourn.
Okay. All right, have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye? Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. Thank you so much.